Welcome everyone back to another episode of Honey Never Sleeps. Today I'm joined by Kevin Riley, the owner of ActionCOACH Warwick. Kevin, please introduce yourself.
Hey Ben, thanks a lot for having me. Yeah, so Kevin Riley, business growth specialist and owner, as you say, of ActionCOACH Warwick. Really pleased to be here.
Good, really happy to have you, as we've been working together for quite some time now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys do over at ActionCOACH?
Yeah, look, there's a team of us, myself, another two coaches, and a team of people who look to help business owners either grow their business, help them with sales and growing their business, or profitability, or a big one for business owners is effective use of their time as well. You know, they've kind of got the nose to the grindstone and doing all hours. So yeah, it's good fun actually.
And so how did you find your way into it? What drew you to business coaching in the first place?
Yeah, so I had my own business for it's funny, I say I had my own business. I've still got a business, obviously, but my first business, should I say, was in travel. And I started it, I guess, at a relatively young age, at the age of 24. And I grew it to 20 million pounds and 75 staff. And during it, I never took advice. I had some advice from people, but I grew it and kind of learned on the job, if that makes sense. And it's pretty expensive when you do that, because you learn from your mistakes, which normally costs money. And one of the big things for me was it's pretty lonely at the top. So as a business owner, it can be a lonely place. I mean, who do you talk to? Who guides you? Who's your kind of trusted advisors? And it dawned on me that I really enjoyed growing businesses and growing people. And whilst I don't physically do the work now of growing the business, actually working alongside business owners to help them grow their business or grow themselves, whichever way that is, and having more time or just changing their lives, is something that I always wanted to do. And then I saw an advert to buy a franchise, and the rest, I guess, is history of 2.5 years ago.
I'm glad you talked about sort of making mistakes and how they're expensive. Obviously, starting young, 24. I'm only a few years older, really, than when you started. And I can really relate to that. And getting to 20 million is a really amazing milestone. So you must be really proud of that. And I heard that over sort of the last year and a half, you've been doing a lot of sort of gifted work for thousands of businesses in your area. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And I'm sure that's been an amazing experience.
Yeah, we love it, actually. You see, business coaching should be available to all, right? And sometimes people don't really understand it or are a bit suspicious, to be perfectly clear. And just saying, look, we'll give you 3 gifted sessions and anyone can have those 3 half-hour gifted sessions to any business owner. It allows them to experience it. I must stress it's not a sales tool. We won't ever sell on it. It's about making a difference to them in 3 half-hour sessions. We can make a big difference to them. So yeah, it's been really good to have helped. I think it's about 1,400 business owners now since we started, and on a gifted basis. And we have a policy that a certain amount of my time and my coaches' times will always go to gifted coaching. So yeah, it's made a big difference in the community, actually. So
yeah. And obviously COVID has really impacted a lot of businesses. I guess when you were coming in and helping, a lot of conversation was around how they react and how they adapt.
I was talking about this the other day. I've been lucky enough to go through a lockdown before my business life. So I ran a lot of walking holidays and flower shows and racing events in my previous business. And we had foot and mouth, and it shut down all the walkways, events were closed. So I went into a lockdown in my previous business, and it was quite interesting because coming into this, I knew how to respond. Obviously I hadn't had something like a pandemic, but we've been through it. And previously when we went through it, there was no government support for us because we were one of the few ones affected. So I coached a lot on removing the fear of survival. And so making sure there's a cash flow in there that showed business owners, hey, we can survive. Because as soon as we removed the fear of survival, we could start looking at opportunities. But whilst you've got this, am I going to survive? We can't do the next bit. So I coached a lot on that. I think plan, act was the other thing as well. That I still coach on that all the time. And change, evolve, adapt. Personally, the word pivot drove me insane. Because it was overused, right? And just pivot your business, pivot. Remind me of this. I think there's an episode of Friends that reminds me of just pivot.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, it's not so easy. So I like change, evolve, adapt, think, plan, act, and that fear of survival. So business owners that we worked with responded really well.
Yeah, and that fear of survival and playing out. Where do you typically start? Like, if somebody's listening today and they are in that survival mode themselves, maybe they're thinking about sales or thinking about cutting staff or whatever it may be. Where do you think that they should start?
Okay, number one is numbers, always. You see, emotion's brilliant in business, right? It drives business owners, the emotion and going where they want to get to and what they're going to do, but it's not great in decision making, right? So we come back to numbers. And we say, right, let's look at the numbers. And I mean real clarity on the numbers. So, because look, if they're bad news, we know what we're doing with them. If they're good news, it's not so bad. And invariably, when I come back to the numbers with business owners, it's not as bad as they thought. You see, the mind's played tricks on you. Oh, it's dreadful. It's this, it's that. Well, let's go back to numbers. No, it's dreadful. Let's go back to numbers. So number one, go back to numbers. Number two, then stop looking at the problem and start looking at the solutions. You see, whatever we focus on grows. So if we focus on the problem, we're just going to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. Whereas we focus on the solutions, we're going to start finding some. So start doing this, looking at solutions, and then take action. So it's numbers, think, then plan out from there, and then act. If you're really struggling with it, just go out to someone that can be trusted. And when I say that, don't ask your best mate that you have a beer with, right? Unless they're really good at business. And then ask them, right? But if you ask your best mate you have a beer with, they're probably going to say something to placate you, or just say something that isn't overly helpful. Ask someone with experience, or someone that can really guide you or give you advice on that.
Yeah, I think we all, business owners, we got our little egos, and sometimes it's quite hard to ask for help, because we want to keep that impression of success, or impression of that we're doing well, whether it be with our customers, our vendors, our staff. So I think that's like the hardest thing to let go of, and just ask for help, ask for support.
Yeah, it is, and that's why I say it's lonely at the top. Because you might, if you're going through a tough time and you go home to your wife or your husband or your partner and you say, hey, it's tough at work, one of the first questions that invariably gets asked if you're a homeowner is the house safe?
Yeah.
And that just adds more pressure, right? So people then don't necessarily want to talk at home. Asking for support, though, is really important, and finding your way of doing it. And sometimes it doesn't have to be, hey, can I have your help? Although I love those words, it's really hard for anyone to say, no, I need your help. Sometimes it can just be, hey, can I bounce an idea off you? I'm thinking of this. So we're not doing it from an area of weakness, perceived weakness. We're doing it from one of, hey, this is my idea. This is where we're going. But really find someone that you can open up to. It really does help.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, and it's very few people who will really understand what you're going through unless you have like a network of other business owners, or people who have really gone through the grind of building a business. And your business has been growing a lot lately, and obviously you've built some wonderful sales funnels that are keeping things going. And obviously, Honey Never Sleeps podcast is mostly around sales. So How have you managed to sustain that growth over the last 2.5 years?
Yeah, it's interesting, sales, right? Can I just go slightly, it's on topic, but not quite with your question, because there's a bugbear of mine, right? A real bugbear. Is that people come to business, and I actually did it when I was 24, and I didn't realize it dawned on me the other day when this bugbear, the thing that really irritates me, I did exactly that. And I'll share mine. I was launching a travel company 1st of June 1998. I was all ready. I'd done my terms and conditions. I knew what holidays I was going to be doing. And I sat in this office, not this one, but in an office with a photocopier. And I thought, how do I sell this?
Okay.
I knew everything, but I didn't know how I was going to sell it. And that's what bugs me, is people put so much effort into the delivery of their product and they never think about how they're going to sell things. And you can have the world's worst product and amazing sales, and you'll do well, you'll get going, right? So number one is having a really clear method of selling. You can have all the funnels you like, but if you don't know how you're going to sell, and we'd call it a sales process, a really clear sales process where we measure from each stage, where people drop out or where people convert, because then you can improve each stage. So what we did, we studied sales a great deal. So not necessarily the lead gen, but we covered sales massively and became an expert in sales. And I love actually the kind of a book from a Sandler book, actually. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. One of the key principles there is sales is a profession, right? If you want to know sales, treat it as a profession, like a doctor would, So become an expert. The other thing is test and measure, but become an expert and know the way you're going to sell before you throw loads of money at generating leads. Because otherwise you're just putting things into a leaking bucket, and you'll miss the opportunity. They've been with you, they've tried, and they've said no to you. It's much harder then to get them back into your pipeline, even though a no is not a no, it's just not at the moment, right? We built a particular way of generating leads, and then when that's working, we add a new one, and we test and measure it and this is how we build other businesses as well. Test and measure all the time until you have around 10 different ways or more of bringing leads into a business. And normally when I start with a business owner, they have one or two, and they say, we want to grow the business. How many ways are you generating leads, interest? Well, the most obvious is word of mouth.
Yeah.
So you're not really trying then, are you? So they want to grow the business, but they're not really trying. So yeah.
It's I really like that. A lot of people have focused on lead generation, or try this channel, try that channel, create content here, create content there. But you guys focused on becoming the experts. And I think that's really important to, certainly, Sandler is a really amazing technique, very conversational, pain-driven, emotional driven, to bring people to that logical decision of purchase. And having that methodology being clear in your business, meaning when you have leads, you know exactly what to do with them. And so many people focus on lead generation first. They put up a Google ad and then they have hundreds of people come and speak to them, and they don't know how to talk to them and how to communicate properly, how to present their proposal properly, how to maybe even share ROI. And I think that's a really good lesson for everyone to take out. And as well as that test and measure, I like that throughout your growth, you keep adding on new channels and you haven't stopped, right? You've got 10 or maybe more channels now that are generating you leads into that perfected sales process. When you started in the original business, what do you think you got wrong in sales, other than not having the process in place? What else did you do wrong that you wish you could have changed?
So I started when I was 24. Yeah, I think there was when the phone rang. So I had two types of sales. I'd sell to someone who'd be selling our holidays almost. So and then the person who was going on holiday would then ring to inquire. Having a decent script there would have been great. because look, we were friendly, we were bubbly, but actually we didn't really know how to close. So people would buy from us, but we're almost, I want to say more order takers as opposed to someone who would influence the decision.
Yeah.
And having nice either or clothes would be good. Hey, are you looking for a twin or double bedroom? A twin, okay, yeah, I've got those. So what I can do is I'll just and not saying, do you want to go ahead? Yeah, I've got one of those. What I'll do is I'll hold that for you. We'll just run through that now, rather than, so would you like to book?
Yeah, setting yourself up for an objection.
Yeah.
Instead, you're driving the conversation the way you want it to go.
Yeah, so I think that would have been great. And then bringing that across, whilst there was, me and then one other, we developed our business style unbeknowingly. So we'd hear each other on the phones and do that, but actually sitting down and saying, this is how we're going to sell and this is how we're going to behave as a team, and doing the culture proactively rather than letting it come together.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing culture, don't get me wrong, but it was never, this is how we're going to do things.
Yeah.
So I think that would be one of the key aspects early on, is saying, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah. I think a lot of small businesses make that same mistake. They kind of just, we'll just figure it out. We'll learn from each other, but they don't sit down and invest their time into the sales process and the script. And they just think, pick up the phone and you'll get more deals. That's the answer to a lot of sales problems, right?
Yeah, it's just throw more stuff at the fan and hope some of it sticks.
Yeah, and not
yeah, exactly. And loads doesn't. We end up wasting time. So and it's interesting, when I talk about time, it's spend time, invest time, or waste time. And always invest time. And if we sit down and write out a script, and by the way, I'm not saying that you then read the script, but what it gives you is, yes, some will actually, but what it gives you is confidence. And then when you've got confidence, people buy confidence.
Yeah.
So when you're off track and you're losing your way in a sales meeting, if you know your script really well, you can come back in and you've got control back. Whereas without that, you're just suddenly on this magical mystery tour in a sales meeting, which they're driving and not you. It doesn't make sense. I
had my first face-to-face sales meeting maybe 6 months ago, and I made that same mistake. I kind of went in, we were coming in to have a face-to-face just to catch up, and I let the prospect take control. There was no clear agenda. I didn't have a plan or a script, and it really felt like a wasted meeting. Luckily, it was a good relationship that I had, so it wasn't so impactful, but I definitely took that and said, I can't have this happen again. And then I started to put together structure. I'll never go into a sales meeting without a clear agenda, with your upfront contract from Sandler, making sure that everybody's agreeing what we're going to talk about, so everything is defined. What else do you think people get wrong when they're getting started in their sales? So maybe they've now invested in their sales process, or they're really good at closing. What's the next thing you think people get wrong when they're getting started?
Their online presence. So I think we've got two things. We're talking very much about sales in person here, but we've got also the other one when you're an e-commerce business. So e-commerce business, I would be saying, hey, what's your add to basket rate, basket to checkout to deal, for instance, and they're not all over those numbers. So that's one thing on an e-commerce side. But generally, when we start out, people aren't all over their numbers anyway. They're not saying, this is my number of leads, this is how I've converted. And it's so interesting when you do it, because I normally say, hey, how well do you convert? I do really well. Right, okay, what are you converting at? And I'd say 9 times out of 10 people say to me 60%.
Yeah.
And I say, so is that measured? Yeah. Is that measured? No. And then I asked them to start measuring it and go back, and then the next week it's pretty depressing for them. I mean, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, okay, when they come back, so it's about 20%. So they don't measure it. But the online presence, I believe that people come online to find a reason not to buy from you. right? We're looking for red flags, and we all know that. Look, if there's reviews and we're seeing reviews, we don't all click on the 5-star and say, hey, let's read all about the 5 stars.
No, we don't.
No, invariably we go somewhere else. So what are the red flags about you online? So if your business has a LinkedIn presence, if LinkedIn is important to your business, right? If it is, make sure that you're posting decent content on there, that you are actually posting, that you've got a presence on there, because people might come on and say, all right, yeah, so she does nothing here, you know, and there's a little red flag.
Yeah.
If your website, are you proud of your website? Because if you're not, I liken it to walking into a retail outfit and walking in and opening the door on the high street and walking in, and it's a bit tatty, and it doesn't look that great in there, or the window was really dirty. We wouldn't go in and buy. We've got this impression, but we're all right to say I've got a tatty website.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that in all these areas, make sure you've got reviews. Make sure that you have a website that you're proud of. It doesn't have to cost loads, but that you're proud of it.
Yeah. I think people they really do forget the power of content. And I think a lot of the times people are looking at the ROI from a lead generation standpoint and not looking at it as that presence or reputation or just the quick Google. You know, if somebody worked with me, the first thing they do, they'll look at our profiles on LinkedIn, they'll go onto our website, and they'll see what I hope they see is, you know, lots of consistent content creation that's valuable, a clean website that looks professional. But obviously, if they saw that tatty website, they wouldn't come to me. In fact, I actually had a meeting where somebody said, your website looked good, that's why I spoke to you. I've researched other vendors who didn't look good and put me off, and they've literally said that to me. So I think people forget the value of content outside of just lead generation all the time.
Yeah, agreed. And make sure that if you're using photos or videos, that they're decent, right? You know, that they look on brand. I mean, I say on brand, meaning I always want them to look professional, but your brand may not be a professional brand, if that makes sense. You might want to have a fun brand, but just make sure they look professional.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is a big
not
thing.
Not pixelated and bad quality video recordings and, you know, yeah, absolutely. And I think people also forget when it comes to content, it's better when you're following up with opportunities or, you know, when you're in that follow-up mode, rather than just going, hey, did you read my email? Hey, can we talk again? Share some content that you're creating. Use it as a way to educate your audience and not just post it on LinkedIn and hope something happens. You can really use content always in that sales enablement, sales engagement part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's good. And you can just drop a prospect a note saying, hey, I saw that, even if it's not your content sometimes, I saw this and I thought of you. If it's really relevant to them, it's just an extra touch point. I mean, your content's great. If you've got the How Producers content, I think it would be suitable for you. Here you go. But just I saw this and thought of you. And then don't try and close or book the next meeting or anything like that. Just put it out there and leave it.
Exactly. And obviously in sales, we don't just want yeses, we also want the no's to give us sales freedom. And sometimes it gives them the opportunity to go, look, thanks for the email, really appreciate it, I'm not interested. And then you can move on. You can have escape from the unknown.
Yeah, exactly. I think getting closure so that we stop wasting time again. And then the other thing actually is, in sales, we should say no.
Yes. Talk us a little bit about that. You know, for other salespeople who are listening, you know, it's hard to say no as a salesperson, right?
Yeah, it is. And you know, particularly if you've got targets and things, you know, so as a business owner, it's a bit easier. But as a salesperson, to say no, my team know if a prospect's not right for us, say no. So I'm fine with that, because an awkward prospect is going to be an awkward client, right? So if you've got a prospect which doesn't fit with you, don't work with them. just say, hey, I don't think it'll work out. Sometimes you say, hey, look, I don't think this will work out, and you say no, they want you even more, right? So there is obviously a scarcity element there as well that you can use. But look, if the prospect doesn't fit your business, please don't work with them. Because you're going to invest so much wasted time. Again, there'll be wasted time on this, dealing with everything that comes up. You're better off just saying, hey, we're not right for you, we're not right for each other, and moving on. They'll respect you more, actually.
Yeah. And obviously when you're losing a customer, I mean, there's an associated customer acquisition cost. And if it's a quick loss because there wasn't a fit, but you were hungry for the commission or hungry for the invoice payment, you then lose the customer and it costs you thousands of pounds to acquire them. It's a cost to the business.
Yeah. Then you've got someone who's possibly unhappy because they've moved away from you, and they tell other people. We're better off at the beginning just saying, hey, look, this don't think this is going to work out. We're not quite right for you. So yeah, and then just say no.
And it all still comes back to the numbers, all of it. Everything you talk about always leads back to the numbers in some way. For a salesperson or a sales business or a business owner, look at the numbers always, whether it's the leads you're generating versus the channel, whether it's the conversion of drop off at each stage in your sales process. Everything should be tracked, right?
Absolutely. And if you are a salesperson and you don't know your numbers, you're not a good enough salesperson.
Yeah.
Right. Every salesperson should know their numbers. And if you don't, make it your absolute goal to know every single number, because you cannot perform well enough without it.
Yeah.
Right. Normally, if salespeople don't know their numbers, it's because they're too scared to look. So, but it all comes back to that. And if you think of anything in world-class performance, they know their numbers, whether it's football, rugby, soccer, baseball, they know the numbers about everything. That's because anything that's measured improves, and they know where they start. We keep improving. The other thing is, if you don't measure and you don't have numbers, how can you manage anything? Because you're making those gut decisions, not number-based, informed decisions.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're making informed decisions, you can just continuously improve, right? We're making data-driven decisions that only make us better and better each time. So Kevin, how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to maybe take advantage of those free gifted coaching sessions you were talking about?
Just drop me a note on LinkedIn. Or on our website, we have got a form you can fill out, and we'll put that out on any content that's out there. But generally speaking, LinkedIn's a great way, a website, or a call. If you see us around at any networking events locally, then please do so as well. So we're always happy to help.
Great. Kevin, I've really enjoyed our chat today, and I appreciate you carving out some time. I think the biggest lesson for everybody here is look at those numbers, look at solutions, not problems, and plan and take action, right?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Ben. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.